Assume our seats.
I think just remind me to use the mic so that Steve and
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, just before we go to the microphone for a second.
We are ready to begin. So welcome everyone to this council meeting of the Dunedin City Council. I'd like to invite Mr. George Lethbridge to open the meeting with a prayer on behalf of the Muslim community.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. That's the Surah Al-Fatiha, the opener, which as Muslims we recite before any endeavour, but I'll also follow it with some prayers from the heart. O Allah, Allahumma anta as-salam wa minka as-salam. O Allah, you are peace, and from you comes all peace. Tabarakta ya dhal jalali wal ikram. Blessed are you, O possessor of majesty and of honour. O Allah, grant us the purest of niyyah, of intention, for all deeds we do are done according to our intentions. O Allah, grant this meeting nothing but the best of intentions, the best of ideals of support for this great town. O Allah, allow us to continue living in peace and allow all peoples of this world to live in that same peace, honour, respect and dignity that we expect as your servants. O Allah, grant us happiness to all the people of Dunedin, grant us all success and make success be the state which reigns supreme in this country. O Allah, Allahumma ameen. Jazakallah khair.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And on that note, I'll say peace, inshallah. So, moving into the meeting proper. Item 2, public forum. There is no public forum. And 3, apologies. We have no apologies. So the vacant chair may be filled before we're done. The confirmation of agenda. We can see the agenda in your order papers. And are there any questions about the agenda? No. So in which case I move that we confirm this agenda without addition or alteration. Seconded, Deputy Mayor Lucas. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Declarations of interest. Are there any changes or updates? I see none. Therefore, I move that we note the elected members' interest register and confirm the management plan for that. Seconded, Deputy Mayor Lucas. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Item 6. This is the potential sale of Aurora Energy, the statement of proposal, communication and engagement plan, page 17 of your order paper. So, shall have Carolyn and Carolyn come to the front desk, and Chief Graham has some prefacing comments, I believe.
Just wait for the team to sit down. So, councillors, in front of you, you have the summary report of the decision you took in non-public recently to consult with the community on the proposed sale of Aurora Energy. As part of that process, council is now required to adopt a statement of proposal and a communication and engagement plan, so you can consult with your community on your preferred option. So we here, the information is laid out in front of you. We're happy to take questions as you may have them, either on the report or any of the attachments.
Okay. Do we have any questions? Councillor Barker?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wonder, on page 8 of the statement of proposal, in it has around the principal activity of DCHL is to provide leadership and oversight of these companies, and I just wondered if it was possible to put in what DCHL's purpose was, which is DCHL's purpose is to achieve the best for Dunedin from its investments, because the lens that we're putting over this is around is quite a DCHL lens. Is it possible to be making amendments at this time?
As a process, you will see that the resolutions on the order paper, and if Lynn, are you able to put them up on a screen, Lynn? Thank you. Bear with, and you'll just see that, and just scroll up. The critical one is the D. If you just scroll up, Lynn, or scroll down, so we can see. Yep. And so the part D of the resolution on your order paper, part D3, gives you the ability to amend the document. So either one is minor, two, minor editorial, or if there's something of more substance, say there's a new topic heading you want, for example, oh look, we've got an E there already, you would add it as an E, and to be included under the delegation you've given me to draft further words. And so something like that, my sense, with the sense of the meeting, is minor editorial, adding in something about DCHL. We can take that broadly if councillors are happy with that. Seems entirely eminently sensible.
I've just got the page from the DCHL where they've set forward their purpose, and I think that for members of the public to understand, I guess, the difference or the similarity between DCHL and their advice to the DCC, I think that needs to be quite clear.
What I would just also remind councillors of, this is the consultation document that it gets produced and goes into a range of different places, lots of these being produced, 7,000 or 8,000 I think. Sitting behind this is a comprehensive list of supporting documents on the website as well. And so there's a lot of things that are hard to, coalesce into something that is really straightforward and able to be produced at a mass level. So there is a heap of material that is sitting on the council website, and it's also will be available if people want it. If there's something they want, and they can ring and be provided with any of that information that is on the website, if they're not able to access it themselves.
So we have a list in our papers somewhere, did I see that correctly, about what would be included on the website with the information? Sorry.
In the back of the statement of proposal, so on the page 15 of this supplementary paper, it says want more information. And so the list is general at this stage, so they're the sorts of documents that we'll be putting up. And so we're just in the process of going through and making sure that we capture anything that might be of interest, we think, to the community in helping them to make the decision. The list that we've got so far has these documents linked to it, which is things like Aurora's annual plan, their annual report, that sort of thing. But we'll put all of this up on the website as it goes live, but it may be that, you know, we get questions in a line of questioning that we think, oh, we'll add some more information up just so that people have as full a picture as they possibly can.
So because we will be in the consultative process, will we be answering people's questions as it goes along, or would that be part of that hearing process? And would all answers to people's questions be then live on the website as well?
Through the chair, so we'll be creating a list of frequently asked questions in the first instance, and then as we go through consultation, we will add to those as we see needs arise.
Very good. Councillor Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have a number of questions. I might just start with a few. I wondered if any consideration had been given to adding the words professionally managed to the a possibility of a diversified investment portfolio, in terms of reassuring the community that if that's the direction we went in, if Aurora in fact was sold, that it would be professionally managed. Had any thought been given to that?
Yes, I think it's an important thing to include in the document. We do make reference to it on page 10 of this paper, but we could beef that up a little bit more to make it a little more prominent.
And another along those lines was in the section, and I'm sorry I just don't have a page number for it, where we talk about, you know, how we arrived at this possibility, and also around DCHL's recommendation around a possible sale of Aurora. I wondered if it would be, if it was considered to include something along the lines of that a range of independent professional advice was sought, because that isn't clear, I don't think, to the community. And I'm thinking of this document, this first up document. I've got no doubt there'll be plenty of backup documents, but I'm concerned about busy people, their lives in disarray right now, engaging just briefly with this. We've got to make it really clear.
We did give some thought to saying that as directly as that. The challenge is that much of that advice won't be publicly available. So we will look. We'll see if we can make that clear. What we will do, councillors, is just so the community can see the advice that you did receive, we will provide a redacted version, a reasonably heavily redacted version of the non-public paper, partly to demonstrate the layers of advice that you did receive at that meeting. But, and I'm looking at Mr. Miller, it's unlikely, it will be heavily redacted, but it will be just to give a sense that there was a lot of work behind the scenes that went into the advice that councillors received when they in taking that decision.
I appreciate that, Chief. I guess it's around that reassurance, and I mean there'll be people who won't dive into even that redacted version. They just want the reassurance that we've been professionally advised independently. It isn't just a good idea we've come up with.
And so now as you'll appreciate, this has been a reason of pulling this together. It's been considered, but there's been a lot of work. We only made that determination about the fully redacted report yesterday, so I think we can certainly add in a sentence about professional advice.
Thank you. And I'll do one more for now. So I noted with interest the consultation plan and so forth for this, and I just come back to the point about the community's lives being in disarray at the moment, and busy lives, as we all know, and around reaching people. And despite staff's best efforts, I just wonder whether we're going to engage with them to the degree, and I've tested this a little bit with people. They kind of get the headlines in the paper and go, oh, that's what it's about. are you confident with the consultation document that we've got up that we're going to be able to engage with those people?
I'm as confident as you can be. There will be a mailbox dropped to almost every household in Dunedin. I say almost because you can never say 100%, but as many as we can. There will be thousands of the consultation documents available. There will be drop-in sessions where people can ask. There will be website information. There will be advertising in various forums. We will do our best.
I have no doubt about that. I just wanted to raise it. Thank you. That's all for now.
Councillor Barker.
Didn't realise I was next. I just wonder, when we're just thinking about our users in Queenstown Lakes and Central Otago districts, was there any consideration of sending out the consultation with people's power bills, or is that just too difficult?
No, there wasn't any consideration with that about that, and I would, answering for Ms Mash, that would be logistically impossible, I think. But we have, since Council took the decision to consult, liaised with the respective territorial authorities in those areas and have agreed plans with them to make sure that the material is easily available and provide them with ways of answering inquiries that do come up.
Councillor Barker. Well, you done. Sorry. Councillor Fiso.
Tēnā koe, Mr Mayor, tēnā koe, CO Graham, tēnā kōrua. I'm following up on Councillor Gary's questions about the consultation document, or the recommendation that we not prepare a separate summary. And having read points 33 A, B, C and the justification for not. When you think of a summary document, do you think, given the pile of information that we have to put out, when you just thought about it, how many pages do you think a summary document would be?
The legislation actually says what needs to be in a summary document. Sorry. Yes, the legislation actually says what needs to be in a summary document, and it's actually reasonably detailed. So we did consider putting out a separate summary document, but we decided that actually it's better to have it all in the statement of proposal, but make the statement of proposal as effectively having two levels, so that there's the level that has the summary at the start, which will be put in boxes, and a clear table of advantages and disadvantages, which effectively does the job of providing a summary anyway.
Could there be given some thought to actually indicating the links, so you can find this, on some sort of summary or table of contents, so that all the documents that information you're pointing people to, can it just be at a glance, like as Councillor Gary said, people are busy, they need to go straight to this, where can I find all this stuff, all those links, please.
And that will happen, Councillor, as part of the design process, and so we'll make sure that it's very clear, and Ms Mash's team are already starting to build the back end of the website to enable that. And if I might, just before we go to your next question, I just have had clarification as to the being able to mail it with bills, and I should have thought of this. So the bills go with different retailers, not Aurora. Yeah, so that's the answer. It's just not possible.
All set. Councillor Fiso. You're done. Very good. Deputy Mayor Lucas.
Thank you. Just a simple question on page 9 of the consultation document, on that third bullet point at the top, where it says about the Aurora's statement of intent for the year ending 30 June 2023, is it? Thank you. And the other question, which is linked to the questions about the consultation, I think we know it's clear that it's the Dunedin City Council that's out consulting. It's not Aurora that's out consulting. I'm just wondering whether somewhere I'm just thinking of somebody who I know who works at Aurora who's already been asked questions. So can we just make it clear that it's the DCC that's consulting? Yeah, you see where I'm coming from? Yeah.
Absolutely, we will do our best to make it clear. That's partly why we've kept it, and it's subtle, but the council website, rather than create an Aurora consultation one, was to make it really clear that it's council as shareholder who is doing the consultation.
Good. Councillor O'Malley.
Your Worship, I'm surprised at the paucity of questions, actually. I'll start on page 10, and it's on the consultation document, sorry. And it's towards... No, it's on the Aurora consultation document attachment. Yeah. And it's a paragraph that ends in the sentence, the sale of Aurora would reduce the council's group debt and would reduce risk to council's future credit ratings, debt covenants and borrowing costs. Can you name the debt covenants that would be exposed to? Is it the LGFA debt covenant?
So got DCHL here in case.
Yes, correct.
Is that the only debt covenant that would be exposed to? Cool. And what is that exposure that the risk is?
The risk of breaching the covenant. So the main risk is around the rates income or interest expense as a percentage of rates income. And so the interest expenses for the entire group, whereas the rates income is obviously just DCC, so that covenant is an issue for us.
Thank you. Can we get clarity on that interpretation? Because I was pointed towards the LGFA site, and in their covenant they make it clear that it's council that is being assessed, not the group. And so
Absolutely, we will make sure that we clarify that, and if you just send the team will find the words, but I'll...
LGFA foundation policies on the LGFA website. Thank you.
Yeah, I can confirm. We have returned one year already, where it is the group interest again for that covenant. Yep.
I understand your point, Councillor, and I will test that before we include that phrase in the document.
I'd very much like to hear LGFA's opinion on it as our interpretation of it. Thank you. I'll ask one more and then hand it on. Our rates income, I think, is about in the order of 190 million from rates. Looking at the annual plan, I think it's 191. Is that correct?
The current year it's 203. Yep.
And the Waipori Fund at $100 million contributes how much to that?
So our distribution is 3.3 million.
So that would be around about 1.5% with a $100 million fund. So with Aurora at $570 million with debt-ish, is my math correct? If I said that if we sold it for 800 million after paying the debt off, we'd have 225, which would be about twice what the Waipori Fund is. What I'm exploring here is how much rates offset will we be able to achieve from a fund that we have after we've sold.
And we are getting into areas that are in the non-public part of the discussion in this, because as we've said, and this is public information, the Waipori SIPO was very, very conservative. The advice is that the likely scale of the Aurora Fund would mean that it would be managed using different parameters, taking a longer term view, because it is likely to be considerably more than that.
Whatever we sell it for, the debt is well known.
Yes, the debt is well known, but the advice, as you know, and as is already public, is that we are likely to get many hundreds of millions of dollars more once the debt of 576 odd million has been repaid.
Yeah, I'm not actually speculating on the sales price. I'm saying, though, that if the sales price was 800, it would be this. If it was 900, it would be that. If it was 1 billion, it would be that. But that calculation is correct, is it not?
The maths when you are doing a total minus another total is correct. The assumption of what you would then get by way of income from that money, I don't think it's fair to, or necessarily accurate to compare what we're getting from Waipori to what we might get from a potential new fund.
would it not be helpful to the ratepayer when they're making a decision on the divestment and the statement that this fund will now be able to give you, well, many hundreds of millions and significant reduction in rates, to at least have assessment of what that could be? Like,
Point of order.
Point of order.
The line that is being pursued has already been answered, and the speculation over the price to be achieved has also been ruled as inappropriate.
Well, yeah, look, I think it's unfortunately, Councillor O'Malley wasn't here for the earlier meeting, but so we're sort of dancing a fine line. But I think if the Chief is happy to answer the question, I think it's not appropriate for this meeting to be speculating about the price. I agree with that, but I think we're dancing this fine line. So the Chief has agreed to answer that question, so we'll carry on with that. So I won't uphold the point of order at this point.
And this is a fine line, and that's the line we have tried to tread in the consultation document, and that we acknowledge that if we could, it would be great to be able to give numbers for ratepayers about what they could expect from the fund by way of income, but it's the balance between tipping our hand to what the possible price is and alerting the market one way or another about what it is. And so this is where we think the balance lies in the document that we've created.
I won't pursue the questioning any further, and I'll just address it in my speech. On page 9 of the, these are all from the consultation document, by the way, we talk about how there was chronic underinvestment in the network from, well, it says the network was set up in the 50s and 60s, and then there's been chronic underinvestment until 2017. Well, not chronic, but I'm just trying to find the exact wording right here now. But my question really is, after electricity reform and the formation of Aurora, was Aurora already under the Commerce Commission's oversight at that point?
I don't know the answer. Does anyone know the answer to that who's in the room? No, I'm sorry, Councillor, we can't answer that.
So my question is, relates to the surety that we are putting into the consultation document, that whoever is the buyer, the regulator on top, Commerce Commission, would assure that you would actually get good rates, good charges on your line charges.
I think I can answer that. The Commerce Commission doesn't care who the owner is. It will administer its regulatory regime to whoever owns the company.
The point, I think the point is different. The point is Aurora could have existed before the Commerce Commission and might exist after the Commerce Commission.
It's another point, quite different. As the owner, during that period, we demanded payments from our company, which diverted it away from doing its own asset management. Did the Commerce Commission at any time intervene?
Point of order.
Sorry, point of order.
The bland statement that we, the DCC, demanded payments from the companies that diverted away from maintenance, I don't believe is appropriate. I was a councillor right through the period, and I never knew that to be the case.
Look, I think I shall uphold that point of order, because you're making a statement about something that did happen and what there. I haven't seen that written as a statement of fact anywhere in documentation. So, at the risk of, that's right.
Did we ask for dividends from Aurora during that period of time that were above its ability to pay?
Well, remembering that DCHL are the ones who get the dividends, but you'll see in the recirculated page 6, which you have in front of you, shows, and I don't know if it answers, it shows the dividends that Aurora paid to DCHL and correspondingly the dividends that would then flowed to council, or the income, because some of them weren't dividends.
The line of my question is getting to whether or not the Commerce Commission has sufficient oversight to stop a company rewarding itself in profits during the period of its ownership, which then could roll on to other ongoing effects. Did the Commerce Commission at any time inform Aurora or the owner that it's paying of itself dividends over and above its earnings was outside the remit.
I have someone not here who is listening. If you give us 2 minutes, I'll be able, who's listening in the background, who will be able to text me an answer to that, I hope. So if you are happy to move on to your next question and come back to that.
I'll yield to anybody else who wants to ask any questions.
We have a few people with questions. Next we have Councillor Walker, then Councillors Gary, Gilbert and Houlihan. Councillor Walker, yes.
Kia ora, and sorry for not being there, and thank you for accommodating myself and Andrew via Zoom. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah, cool. I'll bring it right back to the consultation doc and the engagement plan, and it refers to a question I think already asked around the potential interest in Queenstown Lakes and Central Otago districts and how we reach them. And it might be a question for Leanne, actually. Are we going to set, whoever wants to answer, are we going to set the algorithms on our social media posts specifically, not only to obviously target Dunedin, but to target those areas in Queenstown Lakes and Central Otago, which will be obviously a far more efficient way, perhaps, than some of the other methodologies?
Question, Councillor. We will be doing that. We've also entered into arrangements with both the local authorities in those areas to distribute hard copy materials through all of their libraries and their service centres as well. We'll also be undertaking paid advertising in their local community newspapers, as well as online algorithm manipulation.
Cool, thank you. And still, I mean, it's fairly clear in the papers we've got, but no plans as such at the moment to have any face-to-face opportunities for people out there.
No, there are no plans to do that. And partly we are the view in creating this, and you'll see the hearings are all in Dunedin as well. That's because Dunedin ratepayers have a twofold interest in Aurora. They are both electricity customers of the Lions Network, but they are also ratepayers and therefore interested in what the outcome is, because the City Council is the one who owns the asset, compared to the folk in Central and Queenstown Lakes who are customers of Aurora as opposed to Dunedin City Council ratepayers. So we are treating them slightly differently in our approach.
Great, thank you. That's me for now.
Very good. Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Page 11, and it's headed as page 7 of the document. I just was concerned that the comment, it begins, while a sale of Aurora Energy would not make a difference on this year's draft budget. So the top of mind matter for people in the community is going to be, is this proposal going to affect the rates rise this next year? And I know that's mentioned, but I just feel like it's tucked away somewhat. And I also, and as a subsequent point, wonder if it would be useful to add the words "in the future" to minimise rates increases in the future, just to make that point even more so.
We do what I just looking. We did say that very directly that we used that it wouldn't. I'm just trying to find that thing. We'll look at if we can highlight the fact that it won't impact this year's rates. But we also do, though, need to be careful, because council will have options about what it does. If council decides to sell and creates a fund, council still has options around what it does with the income from that fund. It may choose to reduce debt. It may choose to apply it differently. So we do have to just caution that those decisions haven't been made and are often made as part of the 10-year plan process.
Absolutely understand that, but the first point I make about people's first top of mind consideration when they look at this will be, will this affect my rates, the proposed rates rise, and we're saying it doesn't, so unlikely to. So we need to make sure, we need to make sure that's really, really clear in my view.
And it was there, I'm just struggling to find it in the document, but it was it's a line in there, someone will tell me where it is.
All right. It does say create a future income stream, so obviously that future won't arrive until after the sale has been made.
Yeah, I think it needs to be much more specific than that, Mr Mayor. Honestly, for busy people, I just think it'd be lost on them.
Yep.
In today's
That's the
ODT, in today's ODT, the line is could include such things as paying down debt or offsetting rates.
Yep. Well, I would add that on page 13 of our papers, the paragraph after the one where I just mentioned of create a future income stream, it does say potential uses include reducing council debt and the offset of rates increases.
I guess my point,
Councillor.
Mr Mayor, just to finish, was that it isn't prominent enough. That's really my point. Thank
Yes.
you.
We've heard that, and we can manage that potentially through a pop-out box in the design. Because remember, this is not a design document. It might be that we do something that says this proposal will not affect the shares, something like that.
Yes, and it does further say that council would decide how to use the income through the usual annual plan and long-term plan processes. Next question, we have Councillor Gilbert, then Councillors Houlihan and Wiley.
Thank you. A couple of quick ones, hopefully. I know it's mentioned a couple of times, a few times throughout, including as part of the options overview, etc., in terms of for example, with continued investment, there is the potential for future dividends, but this is uncertain. And I realise this is a line that we are needing to walk, and I'm also aware that this is informed prognostication to some level. But I do wonder whether it could be spelled out a little more clearly as to what the potential is, not just in terms of the finances or financials for selling, but also for retaining. It's referred to, but it's not illuminated, as far as I'm concerned. Did that make sense?
It makes sense, but partly, as we say here, anytime you get past the medium term, our ability to have any degree of accuracy is really problematic. And so we don't have figures really past the medium term. Also, we have, you're talking about Aurora's capital investment program as well, and we again, that will depend on what that looks like.
Another one, I wonder whether there are any, and forgive me, I did devour, but I may have, with all the amount going in my brain, I didn't see any comparatives in there, if there are any that could be used.
Comparatives of what with what?
Similar situations.
Councillor, through the Mayor.
Yeah.
Thanks. The papers that were provided on the confidential agenda last week had those details. They haven't been included into the consultation document because we're keen to avoid giving prospective purchasers the ability to work out what price the council is expecting. So we've deliberately not included that particular piece of information.
Thank you. Thank you. And the last one for now is more of a design, well, it is a design thing. I just wonder whether the one that's titled page 8, which on the consultation document is page 11, but whatever, whether there's any possibility of making that infographic not look like gravestones.
So the infographic hasn't been designed. That is a cut and paste from one of the non-public documents because we thought that was useful. It now has to be designed. None of it's been designed. So yes.
Thank you.
Good. Councillor Houlihan.
Thank you. Earlier, Councillor O'Malley mentioned around the covenants and that being a protection for around our GFA. You may not be able to answer this question, so don't worry if you can't. But there's been quite a few rumours around people saying, as if it's fact, that when we signed up to LGFA that there was a risk to people's property as a security for that loan. Now, I don't believe that's correct, but can you just clarify that so we've got that on the record? Because since the LGFA has been brought up, I thought it'd be good to get that out there in the public and clarify that rumour that's, yeah.
I can categorically assure the public that the LGFA does not have any security over individual properties.
Thank you very much.
Good. Councillor Wiley.
Thank you. A question for the Chief. I note in Friday's ODT there was the article, it talked about the Aurora selling for over $1 billion, $1 billion. I'm just trying to work out where that number came from, and I see in part of the article the company's biggest critic, Richard Healy, a former Delta employee who blew the whistle on maintenance, thought it was a light figure. So, just for the sake of the public, is that a number, or a potential, or are we? Because what I'm conscious about is we talk about a Waipori fund and the size of it, and I know what Councillor O'Malley was referring to. The scope of the fund sort of may impact on how people consult with us.
All I can say is that $1 billion didn't come from us, and so you'd need to check with the ODT how they came up with that. Our consistent message in the consultation document is that if the sale were to proceed, we would pay down the debt of 576 million, and there would be many hundreds of millions of dollars left, potentially, depending on what price was achieved. That's as much clarity as we can give, but many hundreds of millions is the language that we are using on top of the 576.
Okay, no, thank you for that clarity. My second question is when, and you've just sort of referred to that, the sale to repay Aurora's debt and use the remainder to generate income through a diversified investment fund. Now, the question some people I know and talk to, and I think of the Waipori fund obviously is a clear classic, but then we look at the ORC Chalmers property fund and things like that. Are we looking at purely an investment fund like the Waipori fund, or is that all up for consultation with everybody in the public domain?
First, council have to consult on whether it wishes to sell Aurora. So that's the first step. If council decides to sell and sets a price, and that price is achieved, and there's a whole lot of ifs in that, then that money, how that money is dealt with, will form part of the council's investment plan, and that will be council's opportunity to look at how it wants to manage that. But we're consulting on the basis of a diversified investment fund.
Okay, so I think for many, they would consider that just a larger Waipori fund. And what I'm trying to get at is the scope of that fund could be a lot broader and wider.
Yes, that's true. And we've said that the Waipori is managed, the SIPO for Waipori is generally agreed to be relatively conservative. And we're providing all of that information as supporting documents. How the fund, were there to be a new one, is structured has yet to be determined, and that will depend, and I think we say that in the consultation document, on the scale of the fund that you are potentially looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Councillor O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 6, when we're looking at the consultation document, we're looking at the preferred options column. It says, under the sale of Aurora Energy, the council's preferred option is to sell Aurora Energy. I know that in the minutes of the confidential meeting, it is our preferred option to consult on that. I wonder if we could clarify that, because at the moment that would imply that we've already made a preferred option decision.
So, the council has to have a preferred option in the consultation, and council clearly did have a preferred option. So which page, but I just need to be clear because it's if we haven't got that right, that's a really critical point. Which page?
Page 7.
Page, yes, it's got, each page has got 3 different numbers. So in the order paper, it's 7 of 17. 6?
Are you talking about the green
Options.
table? Fine, marvellous. So,
Yes, that's right. That's page
Clarity
7 of the
on
documents.
basically, I guess I hear what you're saying, and therefore I'm probably more comfortable with it at this point, but I wouldn't want it to be considered that the council has already made a decision that it's a preferred decision of council.
what I would draw you, just check, and under option, and it says preferred option, subject to consultation and council approval. Is that not enough? So
It's not that big a point compared to everything else. I've a question now on sort of our interactions and relationship with Aurora as it stands at the moment. In Wanaka there is a high voltage line that I know that the town's been asking for some time and now is being delivered by Aurora. And we have had issues with down at Port Otago with the sound of generators on some of the new freight ships coming in and the question of whether or not we would ever supply electricity to the port. If at the moment, under our current ownership relationship, could we use our letter of expectation to instruct Aurora to send electricity to there with the knowledge that it would affect our dividend?
I'll add a process glip on, so the letter of expectation is to DCHL, just so we're clear. Yep. So you could potentially ask DCHL through the letter of expectation for certain things, but then they get an opportunity coming back through the statements of intent to see whether or not they can commercially give effect to what you were saying, at which point you can have a ding-dong if it doesn't meet council's expectation.
But at least at this point, under our current relationship via DCHL and however we want to maintain that relationship, you know, that structural relationship, we can at the moment, because we are the owner of Aurora, state in our letters of intent strategic objectives.
You can because you're the owner of DCHL.
And then I'm going to a completely different question, but it's looking to the language of some of the things that Aurora faces, and so I'm looking at the page number which is at the bottom of the thing, so it's page 11 of 17. Okay. And it's the sentence under the heading impact of proposed sale of Aurora. And it says that Aurora's delivering a reasonable capital growth, but an infrastructure business with growing demand. Would it be fair to say that that demand, once met, brings revenue?
I think that would be correct to say. I think the critical issue is that at the moment Aurora needs to put capital in to fund the infrastructure, and the consequence of that is that council isn't getting any income. Once that network need is met, then it may be that the income to council would increase. But we do have an interim period where there would be no, we expect that there would be no income or a low income.
Heading off that, and did Aurora not post an $11 million profit last year? So it's got
Its profit in the last financial year, so the year ended 30 June 2023, was a profit of $11 million, and that was then returned into the network. So network upgrades.
Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at is it's somewhat the tone of the document and whether it's got positivity in it or just negativity in it. And when you have growing demand, with that sentence alone and nothing else to go with it, it looks like there's nothing but burden coming towards Aurora. But wouldn't that demand also eventually lead towards income and revenue? So I'm actually looking for a minor change to the document.
I think we could incorporate some words to reflect what you're getting at, because we are very conscious that we need to and want to provide a balanced document.
I think to that point, the green table, whichever page that was on, does cover that better. So I think, and I would see this as falling within potentially the minor editorial, because the words are there, but they just haven't been fleshed out from the table into the narrative around Aurora. Because if you look at that alternative option, which is to keep Aurora, I think it says what you're saying. It will continue to increase in value with continued investment. But I think the one thing that isn't there, and I think we might need to test, if I might, Mr. Mayor, is that point you made around potentially being able to direct future investment. And I think that bit hasn't been captured. So I do wonder that is something that needs to be fleshed out.
I would actually say that's the bit that I want to see fleshed out, our strategic relationship with the asset. Thank you. If anybody else has got any questions, I'm willing to step back.
We do. Councillor Barker has a question, or?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the question, it's on page 5 of the attachment, which is page 1 or 4 of the of the document. It talks about way down the paragraph. So council decided to approve the sale of Aurora Energy. It would set a confidential minimum price, but that's only appears to be mentioned from my reading once in the document, and I think it's a really important point that it's not a fire sale, that it's about achieving the best income for council if it was to be sold, because I see that the proposal is a summary, but I can't see it anymore during the document. So I wondered if perhaps it might be on the what happens next, or somewhere woven through the document, so people have confidence.
That's a really good point, and that I think we can capture, because that is a concept that is in there. And I think that will be minor editorial, but you're quite right, and that is important.
And my next thing was just around, do councillors get to see the document before it goes out to consultation? I know this is a process for giving feedback, etc. So do we see a final document? Because we are looking at it both through the lens of councillors and also the lens of residents and ratepayers for sense and sensibility and understanding.
I'm happy to give a commitment that we will do a track changes version and circulate that so that you can see how we've given effect to whatever you resolve today. There will be, but that will be, hopefully, it'll capture everything, but there is no formal mechanism past that if you give me a delegation.
Just a process point, were you saying that Councillor O'Malley, if he wanted that change put in about the control of the asset, that he would need to move something?
That's the E that I think is in there. I absolutely understand what it is, and it's a very simple, it's just to make sure that there's a reflection of the strategic control that you have over the network if you are the owner of the asset.
I'll ask to leave the meeting for a adjournment to write that correctly.
Yes.
Thank you.
So we'll just wait. And that might be sooner rather than later, because no one else has a hand raised for a question. Do you have another question? Yes.
Let's just give an opportunity if people ask in between. We've touched on the separation of QLDC and CODC ratepayers versus DCC ratepayers. So can we get a surety that when we get that aggregated feedback, that they're actually coming in two different separations? Because I think that the relationship is very different.
And in the draft form, I had asked for are you a DCC ratepayer question. In the end, we decided that it was easier to do it by postcode, because we can separate postcode from essentially you've got authority control in the background because you've got a database. So we will be able to break it down at a postcode level, which hopefully gives you the answer, and then we'll be able to say postcodes, 12 through 15 represent Queenstown Lakes, post whatever they are. Sorry, I don't know them. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think that'll be fine, because I anticipate, based on commentary that's come out of QLDC over the last 10 years, that they may have a very different opinion of Aurora than we do. Just back to page 12, and it's talking about the partial sale of Aurora. Basically, This is all page 12 of the...
Sticking with bottom numbers.
Yeah, bottom number,
The numbers at the foot of the page.
I think. It's the point, yep. Is it an option to sell only part of Aurora Energy? And it was said that DCHL received advice that a partial sale is unlikely to attract large infrastructure investors. How can we test that? See that?
Form part of the directors spoke to that when they talked to council.
How can the people in the consultation process get at that? I guess the reason is it's quite relevant because if you talk, my issue really is one around of the strategic value of the asset as it relates to Dunedin. It does not relate to the CODC and QLDC ownership. So when you're looking at it being a strategic infrastructure activity that affects our ability to do city planning, the DCC component of it is that, but the CODC and QLDC is not, and I would think it would be a relevant piece of information that people would want to know when consulting. Well, I've already asked the question, so I think the public will now know that that question's out there.
Well, what I think we can
Councillor.
say is that in the confidential part of the agenda, there was details around price and what the premium might be. And in calculating that premium, the elected members, the board of DCHL has taken professional advice from a number of professional advisors, and that is the collective advice to us, which is that if you sell it as one, you will get a much better price than if you break it up and sell it in parts or only part of it.
I think just building on that, the point that we're going to add in, the new E, I think we can potentially address that as your concern there a little bit more, but without going into too much detail. What we can say strategically, if you took a strategic lens, it may be,
I agree. We can probably get it in the wording of party. Thank you.
Yeah. And I'd just add to that, because it was a question that was also discussed at the time, and I asked specifically, is if we were to sell a portion, a percentage of it, it would similarly reduce the price, so it would be much less attractive.
I have had, if I may, Mr. Mayor, a note from someone who is watching, who has been providing some advice, and we will test this, but I'm just again putting it out there because I am. I'm not confident council could direct future investment regardless of ownership, as there would need to be a case, and it would need to be financially viable and technically possible regardless of ownership and be relevant to the asset management plan. So
I'll give you an example where Christchurch City Council instructed Orion to put a second line into Christchurch, and that was the line that survived the Christchurch earthquake, and yet that was against the advice of Orion.
And I dare say you're talking about the second line into Queenstown potentially that has been on the cards for a while.
What we're getting is actually there is precedence just to our northerly neighbours that in fact the owners instructed the CCO in a way that CCO didn't want to go ahead, but they did go ahead with it.
But it must have met, my testing of that, it must have met those other requirements as well.
I'm sure it did. But if you aren't the owner, you don't even have any of those opportunities. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Councillor Fiso.
Tēnā koe, Mr. Mayor. Hypothetically speaking, if I was the whanaunga, that is a person related to an employee of Aurora, and I was aware that there are a number of employees who are against the sale, of course, given 40 years of neoliberal economic policies which have seen massive layoffs as a result of privatisation of companies. Would I be advised to make a submission anonymously?
I'll answer that indirectly in saying that anyone is able to make an anonymous submission if they choose to do.
You were done. Councillor Melly.
We are talking about whether or not going forward into deliberations in the future you might make something that would indicate that you have already predetermined. However, I do think that we've got a role to play in interacting with the community on this. So if a councillor were to actually make a submission and then determine that they aren't conflicted, they're still allowed to sit forward?
On a decision of this, we would need to take independent advice based on the nature of the submission. But there is a very real possibility that you would not be able to participate in the decision making. That would be my, that would be the advice. If you then ignored the advice, the entire council is at risk of judicial review of that decision. But that would, you agree, Carolyn? Yeah. Yeah.
And just to continue then, I'm sure that we will be receiving emails from the media. Interaction with the media would have the same impact?
You know, councillor, that in this process my advice has been just to say as little as possible, always around this when we're in a formal consultative process, so as not to prejudice your ability to participate at the end. But as always, you are free to engage with the media however you choose, but you should think carefully that you don't predetermine a position publicly that then prevents you from participating in the decision-making part of the process.
Thank you.
Right. Councillor Elaine.
Thank you. Given the question prior, following up on the question that was earlier to that, is surely that would mean that councillors can't make anonymous submissions then if, you know, like, because then there's no transparency around what they're going, how they're going to be voting and, you know, what they're going in, you know what I mean? Just...
I would advise that councillors didn't make anonymous submissions, but and I trust the integrity of the councillors and the integrity of the process.
Councillor Fiso.
Can I clarify? I said hypothetically. I wasn't speaking for myself as a councillor. I was speaking of as a member of the public.
Absolutely. But truly.
Sorry.
No. But councillors, this is a serious thing, and if any of you, I think, are considering submitting, then I would strongly advise that you came and took advice from staff before submitting or in any form. And what I would say, it is highly likely that were you to wish to submit, we would go to the Office of the Auditor General to seek their advice rather than just providing officer advice, because this is a decision of such significance that we would want to make sure that we had everything squared away.
Okay. I have no further questions on the books. Does anyone else have a question? So we'll put up the resolution. Oh yes, we're going to have the thing. Okay, so I'll move that we adjourn for the time taken to get the addition to the resolution resolved. Seconded Deputy Mayor Lucas. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. above. Do we have our councillors back online?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I'm here.
Very good, in which case we'll resume. So, at this stage, I'll move that Council adopts the resolution that you see with items A to F behind me, seconded Councillor Ackland. So, in speaking to this, I'd just like to make a couple of quick points. Firstly, that Council have already agreed to consult, and we've also agreed on our preferred option. So we've actually met and discussed in detail and voted on those. And the purpose of this report is to, the purpose of this motion, of course, is to get Council's approval to this draft statement of proposal and all the communication and engagement that goes out to the public. So we now have a resolution that includes that, and we have had a good amount of discussion on the consultation document, which the public will have a reasonable amount of time to consider, and we will also be going out and discussing that with the public as part of our annual plan interactions and consultation. And the key reason why we're doing this, in order, there's 5 reasons that I see. Certainly to repay Aurora's debt, over 550 million, to avoid the DCC Group's debt increasing to fund Aurora's future capital growth, but also to establish a diversified investment fund, which could be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Also to have a more consistent and sustainable income stream to Council. And lastly, to reduce risk by having a more diversified portfolio. So I commend you to vote for this and ask for speakers to speak to it. Councillor Barker.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The critical factor in making this decision is giving the public an opportunity to consider the proposal, not only because we have to by law, but also because it is the right thing to do, to give them the opportunity to make submissions and to be heard. And the other key is to make sure that the public have the facts to consider. Last weekend, when I was volunteering at the South Dunedin Festival, I had quite a number of people come up and voicing concerns about Aurora, some for, some against, and it's evident that people need good information during the process to help the DCC make good decisions. This is a good process for hearing the public, who are the owners of Aurora, about what they want to do with their asset. We've got a lot of information to share, so it's important it's clearly stated and not overly simplified. And I think it was useful to talk about, for example, that Council would set a minimum price, because there's being prices bandied about on social media, in the media, etc. So that was a really important point to go through. And I know it's really hard to take a lot of complex information and make it simple. When we look at the advice, and the advice from DCHL, we need to take that very seriously. DCHL's principal activity, as stated in the documents, is to provide leadership and oversight of those companies on behalf of the ultimate shareholder, the DCC, the people of Dunedin. And I specifically asked for its purpose to be included because I think it needs to be very clear for the public that its purpose is to achieve the best for Dunedin from its investments. So they have a very clear commercial lens over the companies, and some councils, as evidenced through the questions, have other lenses that we also need to consider, and those lenses from our communities. On our council side, DCC very clearly stated that we want dividends from the DCHL, and we've had advice that a fund could provide more surety of dividends, lessen risk, require less capital and have less volatile returns. DCHL has advised DCC that their advice is there is a compelling case for selling Aurora, so now we need to hear from the public, those who own and those who are affected, the people in Central Otago, by an Aurora sale. Some of the key things that I've heard already is that people are worried about us selling the family silver and frittering away the proceeds. People are concerned that Aurora will be like the 1980s reforms when key assets were sold off. People are worried about their power prices. People are concerned about foreign ownership. On the other hand, people are upset about rates rises and the prospect of escalating council changes in the charges in the future. And people are worried about the debt burden and the cost of interest rates. And people want us to invest in our infrastructure. None of these decisions are easy, and it's unfortunate the councillors can't share all of the information we are privy to. I was pleased to hear that we would have some redacted information available, because obviously we know a whole lot more that we can't talk about, which might affect the price that if we decided to sell that we might get. We only need to look at our most recent 10-year plan and development since then as our LTP pre-engagement to see all that the community wishes for our future city and what that may cost. So I look forward to what the public, owners and users have to say about a sale of Aurora. This is a huge step for us as a community, probably one of the most significant decisions that we make in our term in office. So we need to look at the possibility of a sale through a large number of lenses, and that's why I urge the community to come out and have their say, and also to read all of those documents that are necessary for them to gain their understanding of the pros and cons, and also to talk to us as councillors about what we have put as our preferred option, and we might be able to help some people understand, because what I see is there's a lot of misunderstanding out there in the community. So this process will help, hopefully, with that understanding and with people's ability to talk to us as well.
Thank you. Councillor Walker, then Councillor Weatherall.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor, and yeah, thank you to Councillor Barker for those words. Yeah, I just want to, firstly, again, thanks to everyone today. Actually, I think the debate has provided some really useful feedback, but I also really want to thank our phenomenal staff who have toiled, we all know, late into the night over the last few days to get us to this point in such a professional manner. And also, I just want to thank Lynn sitting there today for being so proactive around my constant nagging of you via by the system I'm using here up in Wellington. So yeah, I just want to, I want to be clear what we're doing here today. Firstly, I think it's important to remember we are responding to Council's letter of expectation we put together to DCHL, asking them to provide us with options around the future makeup and strategic direction of our what's an important investment portfolio, and this is just part of that request that we all made, and I thank them for that, actually. Secondly, I think it's important to point out that we are not deciding to sell Aurora here today. We are voting whether or not to adopt the consultation document and approve the communication and engagement plan. And I'm happy to do that because I'm genuinely interested in hearing the views of the wider community on this, particularly, I guess, as someone who has moved back and forth on this idea since it was first mooted. So I reiterate, I am genuinely keen to get wider public feedback around the potential divestment of this holding. And if we do, I guess, ultimately vote to proceed with a sell down of Aurora, the advantages of de-risking us as an entity, and of course moving council into a more certain level of income generation must, I think it's important, I think that must be weighed against the potential disadvantages. And I think a few of you have alluded to those. And the major one for me, of course, is being the potential future increase in value of Aurora that council would not benefit from. And that's never difficult. Anything to do with questions around financial situations of this type is as I've often boringly mentioned before, is often like looking into a crystal ball. That said, and I think it should be the case for all of us, actually, I certainly will not formulate a final decision on a potential sale until I've read, heard and digested what I hope will be a significant amount of ratepayer and resident feedback on the proposal at hand. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Weatherall.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. It's obvious, going by the 13-1 vote at our previous meeting, that councillors are united in wishing to engage and listen to the views of the public in regards to the possible sale of Aurora. With public consultation, it's my view the drive to submit feedback and opposition always seems to be greater than the drive to agree. In this instance, I'm optimistic we will receive balanced feedback, as it is imperative we hear from those in favour as well as those against a possible Aurora sale. It's undoubtedly clear that this is the largest financial decision Dunedin City Council has faced in a very long time, and I look forward to a record amount of submissions. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gary.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And as we consider and debate this consultation document, I just want to start by making the point that I did in our questions, and that was that people in our community have incredibly busy lives, many of them in disarray in these deeply uncertain times, and this will not be top of mind for them, I think. However, having said that, it is a particularly important matter that we want to hear from the community on. So I thank our staff for the work they have put in a short amount of time to making this an accessible document. And the things that I think are important include the fact that we have listened to, and DCHL has listened to, a range of professional advisors with specific expertise in this field before we got to this point, much of which we can't share. However, it is important to reassure the community of that. And particularly to those who think this is just a bright idea of councillors round the table to find a slush fund to do pet projects, and I have heard that very thing said in the public, that it's actually a very considered proposal is what I want to make the point on. It is important that we get the facts before our community. We have to choose those facts somewhat in making the very important ones clear. And I think simplifying them is important because most people will not look at the backup information honestly. They will want the key points. They will want to know, how does this affect me? What does this mean for the future? What will council do with this money if in fact the community comes out in support of and we make the decision to sell at some future point? What would happen to that money? And again, that reassurance that if that was the path we followed, then professional fund managers would be involved. And I think that is a really important point to make. So this consultation document is pivotal, and I believe that it's very easy to support this. We just need to make sure that we communicate with our community very clearly, and I look forward to hearing from them.
Thank you. Councillor Houlihan.
Thank you. Yes, so the concerns that others have raised, I've had as well. I just want to go over some questions that I've asked in the past, but this is a wee bit awkward because, of course, we may not be able to give the answers to those questions because some of the answers were given in confidential. But my first concern was I'm all in support of keeping assets. I'm not in support of selling off assets because I go back and I've told this story numerous times and some people go, oh, here we go, but is around the railways with Faye Ridgewhite and how that was stripped, and I used to hear that almost daily from Dad, who complained about how the railways were stripped and it was terrible. And now this is not an example of this, and I'm satisfied with that. My other concern was overseas ownership, because I'm concerned about a few things around that, but then another concern I had was price increases. This is a regulated industry, so no matter who buys it, it's regulated. So the set prices. So if people are worried, or someone from overseas or someone could come in and just put up the prices, right now the way it's set up, that's not possible. So you can rule that out. The other concern I had was that selling it after quite a bit of work has already been done, and I've had an answer to that I'm very happy, well, not happy with, but that I can see makes sense. The other question I had was that selling part of the company and not the whole lot, because I thought maybe an option we could have looked at was selling off central, keeping Dunedin. But certainly, as it's been discussed here many times today, the advice we got was that certainly premium price could be attained if we sell the whole amount, not just break it up into bits. So the other issue is Standard & Poor's and the credit rating that they've looked at. Now, this is our credit rating has been lowered, as I understand it, at the moment. However, this is something that's impacting on all councils throughout the country. So it's not just us. And but obviously, this if this sale goes ahead, obviously at the moment this is just a consultation to go out and propose it. If it goes ahead, this will certainly help us financially in the fact that it will clear a lot of that debt that's held through Aurora. The other thing that needs to be taken into consideration is that councils are being hit by huge amounts of costs with Three Waters at this present time, and it's not, once again, not just us. So those were some of the concerns I've had. I've got answers to all of those that I felt I was able to tick them all off for my self-benefit, but also for my future decision-making. I feel like those answers have been clarified.
And I'll just make a note that Council's credit rating has not been dropped, it has not lowered, it's only the outlook. So, Councillor Fiso.
Tēnā koe, Mr Mayor. I would just like to respond to the comment about balanced feedback and make the observation from my worldview and perspective and values base, there is nothing balanced about any of this. And as I've clearly stated many times before, I deplore neoliberal economics, which we are all enslaved to, and I compare this decision, or whatever it is, to that we made in the public meeting last week to increase our social housing rental from possibly 3%, $4 to $7 a week, to 11%, $14 to $25 increase. So to me, that sort of indicates the outlook of overwhelming majority of this council. I'm reprising Whaanana Efeso Collins's speech, and he talks about it's expensive to be poor. It's becoming increasingly socially unacceptable to be poor. And for me, I really do hope that overwhelmingly the public, the voting public, turns down this possible offer, because it is about people. When we make these decisions, the whānau and the employees are faceless to us. They're mere numbers. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Lucas.
Thank you. And as many speakers have already said today, the decision today is not about deciding to sell Aurora. It's about going out to consultation to hear what our community wants us to do. And that decision is in the context of where Aurora is currently. They've got a massive capital program ahead of them. It's a growth asset which is underpinned by a stable urban network. It needs access to equity, which we can't provide. They need to continually to borrow for capital expansion and to pay their dividend. And council, and I don't believe Aurora at this stage has no plan to repay the debt, not that I have seen. We're sitting here today after and I think all of us, we've spent many hours reading and having professional advisors present to us to get to this. This is not something that we, as I think Councillor Gary mentioned, is that we've taken lightly. We have been well, I'm trying to think what the word is, informed to get to this point. And I think it's now our role to inform the public. Like Councillor Barker, have already fielded many questions, and I think there's a lot out there that people just want to be reassured on. The proposal was to change the asset class. We're not getting rid of the family silver, as Councillor Barker mentioned, and we just need to explain to our community what the proposal will mean. And I hear in question time, and also Councillor Walker's comment about where Aurora might be in the future and its ability, it may be able to pay significant dividends, but to get to that point, there's a significant amount of borrowing at this stage from what we can see from the capital program, and then there may not be a return for us, and we don't know what environment will be down the track. So I, like other speakers, look forward to hearing what our community tell us, and I look forward to many submissions, as Councillor Weatherall has stated, and we hope that we have hours and hours of hearings, because that's what our job is to listen and to hear what our community want.
Thank you. Councillor O'Malley.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Obviously, we are just talking about the consultation document today, but we need to make sure it is well balanced. And I think that in some respects that's why I'm happy that Part E has been added, because it brings in one of the most important considerations we have to make is transport, water and electricity are the determining factors of where you do your city planning. And we have the least control over electricity distribution, but at least we have some. If we are not the owners, we will have none. I also want to ask the question that everybody's been saying that this will be such an attractive thing for investors, but the $575 million projected debt will have to come off their books too. So how is that investor going to get its return on investment? Sure, they're coming in with lots of money, but they could have put that somewhere else and got a simple return on investment. There will be a temptation to run to fail, because that is exactly what happened with railways, and it's exactly what past councils actually got Aurora to do, run to fail. The Commerce Commission did not intervene during that period, and yet now, after running to fail and having to come back with an enormous capital program, the consumers are paying a higher rate for their connections than they probably would have been if we'd balanced it differently. And that's one of the reasons I want to make sure that QLDC and CODC are separated from the DCC assessment, because there is a lot of bitterness in that part of Otago as to the behaviour of a distant owner to a electricity lines company operating in their area. I also am curious as to why group debt is coming back up now in front of us so much, because in the first 6 years of me on this council, it was explained from Treasury that group debt and council debt are generally separated. Yet this document is full of just group debt. And that's why I'm asking for the LGFA covenant documents to be clarified and make sure that position is indeed correct. Because if it isn't, we might be going in with a supposition that's not correct. Also, I would wonder what the role of Standards and Poor's is here. They were clearly in behind water reform. They were right in behind the changes in government during the 1980s that led to electricity reform. So I'm not too sure if they're not playing a role here as well. Rates rises. Isn't this the very thing that made us make them pay us dividends during the past? Our inability, our fear of saying, actually, this is what it costs to run the city, so let's go and defer it over here by dipping into the value of something that we own. And if it's our own asset, aren't we having just a circular relationship if we charge our ratepayer a line charge to make some profit to reduce the rates, which we could have asked them for the rates in the first place? And I really do want to emphasise and finish on the strategic asset here. I really do think that if you put it down as to what allows a city to grow and have control of its growth, it's transport, water and electricity. And we are quite literally risking the chance that we will lose control over that component of our city planning. And that is something that needs to go into the calculation. Thank you very much.
Councillor Vendors.
The truth is we've never had control over our electricity since we sold Waipori. In the years under the Chin, Cull and Hawkins administrations, councils, the questions that I kept asking about our council companies, especially Aurora, were inevitably suppressed or deflected because there was no real oversight and no even real interest in getting into the council companies, which were seen by all three councils in general as in the too hard basket. We have never had control over electricity, and we won't in the future either, because that control is vested very much in the Commerce Commission. Commerce Commission decides how much profit the owner can make. Commerce Commission decides how reliable and to what standard the distribution system needs to operate under, and all that will stay the same. So we have a situation then where the question has just arisen, why is it that having talked a lot about council debt for a long time, we're now talking about group debt? I've always maintained that we needed to talk about group debt because, especially under the Cull Council, we loaded at least $100 million of DCC book debt into the council companies. And we found various other ways of loading it into the council companies since then with DVML and with Torrey Gorge Railway. We have loaded so much DCC book debt into the companies that it makes no sense to talk about what's on the DCC books alone. You need to look at the group, that is to say the DCC plus the companies. Standard & Poor's does that because they're simply a business-focused and rational organisation, and they recognise that it's the group debt rather than whatever has been manufactured on the DCC books that is of real interest. Similarly, the Local Government Funding Agency, again, looks at the group debt. Because it is borrowing not just to the DCC, but it's also borrowing now, and has only recently become available, also borrowing to the council companies. So it is the group debt that must be looked at, and it's the group debt that really should be part of the Dunedin public's awareness. And I have for many years tried to get the ODT to print a graph of the book debt. And every election, for at least 3 elections now, they've absolutely refused to do that. And again, if you look at the Aurora Fund plan would come after sale, the most recent ODT article about debt, it says, and I quote, "As things stand, debt for the council and its companies is on an upward trajectory." A space rocket could be described as being on an upward trajectory. So would a fireworks rocket. It's more like a rocketing trajectory, where we have $1 billion worth of debt now, and within 2 years we're planning a $1.5 billion worth of debt. This is a skyrocketing trajectory, not just an upwards trajectory. And it's this skyrocketing trajectory that is unsustainable, unaffordable, and the result of significant overspending in many areas, in my view, for a number of years now. And I regret that it's only this that has actually finally forced council to start looking at the council companies, of which it has had minimal oversight for many years. And I'm entirely happy with this current process to go to the public and ask them, do they really want to keep funding Aurora, getting no dividends for many years to come, funding a whole lot more debt into Aurora, in the hope that in many years, say 10, Aurora will be worth a great deal more than it is now, and that's obviously the case. Or do you want to stop climbing into massive debt, which gives you a negative degree of control? Debt is what is reducing our control, and this proposal with Aurora is going to help that significantly, in my view. My only worry is the frittering away of the proceeds. And we have yet to look at different ways where we can ring fence the proceeds from a potential sale. My real worry is that we have already been frittering the proceeds, and we really need to look seriously at how we change the trajectory of our current debt. Thank you.
Councillor Wiley.
Thank you. I think the bottom line is this is about going to consult our community, our ratepayers. This is part of our annual plan consultation, and I think that's the key aspect that we should be focusing on. It is important that our ratepayers do have an understanding of what is going to happen or what potentially could happen, but that's right across the city with everything we'll be consulting on. And I think some of the discussion that and points being made through debate are very much around the views on whether we should sell or not. I think we're overstepping what we're actually looking at in the resolution. And I think it is about the consultation. It is about engaging the community and getting their feedback. Yes, we can add your slant to it, add your angles to it, and your personal views. But at the end of the day, the facts are going to be put in front of the community, and I think the community need to hopefully understand and come and talk to us, engage with us, and hopefully enjoy reading the material, getting an understanding of what's taking place, so they can really put some good information down on paper to us, or come and present in front of us. The part being is that when you look at this type of business and what it means for the city, I sort of struggle with some of the commentary. It's not a business that's going to pick up and leave. It's highly regulated. The Commerce Commission is all over it. And actually that's been part of the detriment of what we've had to go through over the last 6-7 years. Again, we've got to start looking forward and focus on what can we produce for better outcomes for our residents. And I guess going through this consultation plan, we'll hear from our residents and see what they think. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So, in replying to the various commentary we've had, I'd like to reiterate the comments of Councillor Wiley that it's all about the consultation with the community, and the staff have worked very hard to produce a document which will be finely tuned before it actually finally goes out, so that it's the public that will have a good say on this. And because it coincides with annual plan consultation, we'll have the opportunity to be out amongst the community and discussing the issue with them. The key thing about this event, this posited sale of Aurora, is whilst we are selling the company, we are not selling the asset. And I very much agree with what Deputy Mayor Lucas said about that. We're keeping that asset and transferring it to a different type of company or companies, so that we have a professionally managed, balanced portfolio that does actually return us an income. So what we're doing is taking a capital consuming company, which has now accumulated $576 million worth of debt for the council, or for itself, but also for the council, and transferring the asset value of that into a capital producing company, which means that we will be able to pay down council debt, and once that's done, start offsetting rates. So this is a pathway to financial sustainability for the council. Having said that, we'll take the vote by division.
Councillor Ackland.
Aye.
Councillor Barker.
Aye.
Councillor Benson Pope. Councillor Gary.
Aye.
Councillor Gilbert.
Aye.
Councillor Houlihan. Councillor Lefiso.
Abstain.
Could I just ask people to turn their microphones on, because listeners at home won't be able to hear neither our councillors at home.
Councillor Lucas.
Aye.
Councillor Mayhem.
Aye.
Councillor O'Malley.
Aye.
Councillor Vandervis.
Yes.
Councillor Walker.
Aye.
Thanks. Councillor Weatherall.
Aye.
Councillor Wiley.
Yes.
Mayor Raddick.
Aye.
Carried 13-0 with one abstention. 14.
14, I think.
Oh,
Yep,
sorry, my mouse didn't capture them all.
We're all here today. So thank you very much, councillors. We have another vote now, another motion in front of us, item 7, the annual plan, communication and engagement plan. So do we have any comments? No opening comments. So Ms Mash is coming to the table. Do we have any questions? Councillor Barker.
So we had a lot of pre-engagement during the LTP process last year, which a lot of us worked quite hard at, and I can't find that on the council website anymore. How is that pre-engagement going to be captured, given that it should still inform some of the planning that we're doing?
We still have it, and there's still reference to the fact on the website that we were doing a long-term plan until recently, and an explanation around that. I have to think from memory that a lot of the issues were 9-year plan matters, and some of them you have dealt with in your deliberations for the annual plan. Things like zero carbon came, hockey came. So how do we see it going forward as part of that? I think that's a conversation to be had.
So I've got some of it in front of me about what people wanted, and I just wondered, because it's only captured in the reports and previously it was sitting on the long-term plan consultation, so worried about people getting consultation fatigue, and they say, well, we were pre-consulted at this time. How do they see that that consultation was actually captured? Is there a place that it lives on the website?
Only in the reports that came to council after that early engagement for the long-term plan. Can you easily access it outside of the reports? Not at this time.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Gary.
Thank you. Ms Mash, I note the reference to engaging with youth, and it is a tough group to reach to some degree, and along with that a subsequent question which is relevant, that I notice social media comments will not be taken as formal submissions. Would you have any comments to make about that at all?
Yes, so we do recognise youth as one of those particularly hard to engage with spaces. So we'll be working with our community development partnership people through our own youth council and other avenues to target youth. As to social media comments, the sentiment will be captured and presented back to you, but not necessarily held in the same regard as the submission process.
I understand it. Just coming back to young people, that is the way many of them communicate. So I'm sure you're aware of that, and that's in your thinking. And I just don't know how that engagement will go with young people if that's not part of the tools we use.
Look, I think the feedback through social media is it's just technically not a submission that gets captured in our submissions database because of how that's set up, but it's fully reported on, so we'll be able to say there were this many comments about this topic on this social media thing. But it's not a formal submission in the database. It's for councillors to determine how they then weigh one up against the other, right?
I see no further questions. Therefore, I'll move that council approve the attached annual plan, communication and engagement plan. Do I have a second for that? Deputy Mayor Lucas. I'm happy with what I see in the plan, and I think We've had plenty of discussion about the annual plan, and I'm pleased that we're in a position to go forward, and we've already looked at some of the engagement events. So I hope that many of the councillors attend those events and lots of the public turn out to discuss it with us. Any further comments? Councillor Gary.
Thank you. I reiterate my earlier comments about busy lives and the difficulty of people engaging in these uncertain times. And I know staff, it's a very complex and there's a lot of work involved. So I acknowledge that. I think we, as elected members, are going to have to try particularly hard in terms of our engagement on this particular matter. And I just make the point that I hope we don't fall into the trap of receiving submissions and taking them as, when we get them as a group, taking them as one as opposed to individuals. And we have had that issue before. And I ask about the social media because it kind of comes into the same context. I know the frustration for school children who submitted in the past, and it's been taken as a group as opposed to individual submissions, and there's a lot of effort and thought goes into it when people submit. So I think we do have to acknowledge that and make sure that we give credit for that as we take that feedback on board.
Very good. Councillor Barker.
Just quickly want to elaborate on the question that I asked about keeping the consultation material that we all worked on late last year. I think it's really important that that is visible to the public. When we were out there asking people for the consultation and their thoughts, some of them were saying, well, council will never pay any attention to us, and being cynical about the process. So I want to make sure that we have that information captured. We will also, that will come in useful during our strategic review, our grants review, etc., which are part of the long-term plan process, but I want to make sure that we've captured that information and it's threaded through what we are doing in the next year as well.
Thank you. And with that, I'll take the vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And thank you for being here today, and that is the end of the meeting.